everyone this morning. Thank you for praying for me and Everett and Ariel. Everett started feeling better before we did, which meant he was off the walls while I was beginning to feel good and Ariel was beginning to feel bad. And we appreciate y'all praying for us. I was quite sick, so thank you, and he was too. This morning we're going to have a number of passages come out of Genesis, and then we'll make our conclusion in Luke 15. And you can see the heading and the picture there. Are we good? You picking me up? Okay. And the heading says, "Brothers fight, it's just what they do." And I don't know, parents want to give gifts to their kids, but I was thinking of one thing in particular. When we were kids, we had a trampoline, and I guess some things that parents think too is that it will keep kids busy. I don't know that we fought any more anywhere else than on that trampoline. Mike and I would get into, I'm talking about hitting each other on the trampoline. And it's just what they do. But when you look in the Bible, Matthew chapter 20, 25, and 26, chapter 20, verse number 25, Jesus called them unto him and said, "You know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and that they that are great exercise authority upon them. But it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your minister." And in John 18, Jesus tells the rulers, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it was of this world," he said, "then would my children fight." And this morning, this is another sermon on division. And I do it this morning as in the afternoon. I'm going to go visit with my second grade teacher, Gail Vogler. She'll be lecturing at the Martinsville Historical Society, which used to be the courthouse. And she's going to be talking about toys that the children played with during the American Revolution, 1700s. I am not overly interested in the toys that they played with in the 1700s, but it is an opportunity for me to give a book to Gail Vogler that if she reads it, it will discuss our religious divisions. And I have said, I've used her before by name as an example. Maybe I'm silly for being a grown man and I still think about my second grade teacher. I don't think it's that silly. There are plenty of people who talk about some of their favorite teachers. And I just say I don't know why it doesn't matter to people that I think it should matter to, that we're divided. And it's like it's getting worse and worse. I mean it this way. There are so many non-church going people in Martinsville, Virginia. And if you put us in a category of that sense, I'm a churchgoer, she's a churchgoer. I care about the division, and other folk just seem to not. And so this morning, this is what I want us to look at. It is the story of mankind fighting from the beginning. Genesis chapter 4, Cain killed his brother Abel, and that basically hinged around religion. There's no basic to it. It hinged around religion. Their offerings on an altar. One was accepted, one was rejected. You look at Genesis chapter 9, 25. It is fighting is part of mankind, and division is part of mankind, of our history. You take a man and his 3 sons who just separated themselves from the entire population of the planet through the boat, the ark, and when they get off, what do? One of them, the son Canaan, commits a sin, and they're all now divided. It's like we got 4 men around here, and now we're divided from each other. It's the history of mankind. When you look at Genesis 21, verse number 9, the word will be mocked. Sarah saw the older boy with her son Isaac, and it says, and he mocked. Well, when you look at Galatians 4:29, it just full on says Ishmael persecuted Isaac. You look at Genesis 27, verse 41. This is the verse where Esau vows to kill his brother, his younger brother. Essentially, he says, when my parents are dead, I'll devote myself to go out and find my younger brother and to kill him. Genesis 37:27, you take 11 brothers who actually were set to kill Joseph. And I believe it was Judah who stands up and he says, one brother says, we can't just kill him. Then another brother says, but we can sell him. Let us sell Joseph to the Ishmaelites, Genesis 37:27. And if you know your Old Testament text, you can go on and on and on. Moses and Aaron and Miriam, they fought with each other. You can call it sibling rivalry, and it is. You can call it that. But we all know there are loads of relationships in life where we find ourselves fighting with each other. And as Joey said at 9 o'clock, when we fight with each other, we often forget how good we have been to each other. Now, why do we fight, though? You have a list of those brothers in the Old Testament text. Why is it that we fight? Why do we fight today? I think the knee-jerk answer is usually money. Money is the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. 1 Timothy 6:10. And James 4 says this, from whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence, even of your lusts that war in your members? You lust and you have not. You kill and you desire to have. You cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you have not because you ask not. And you ask and receive not because you ask amiss, that you might consume it upon your own lust. It is the case. A lot of fights, a lot of wars have been all put into action over money and wealth and gain. But that's not necessarily what we're looking at this morning and not what we're seeing in the story. If you put all of these on the screen, the only one that's different is Cursed be Canaan in Genesis 9:27. That's the only one that actually deals with something that's like, that is immoral behavior. That man did something sexually to his father. But the rest of them, they don't have anything like that. Cain just goes out and kills Abel. Isaac and Ishmael, they're little kids. Esau vows to slay Jacob. This is not going to be things over immoral behavior. But this is what we have. We fight as siblings, as people, as neighbors. We fight over respect, affection, prominence, whatever you want to call it. In Genesis 4:5, Cain, but unto Cain and to his offering, God had not respect. Didn't accept it. And that is what we want, is we want acceptance. But in Cain's instance, he wanted it on his terms rather than what God had ordained to be right and good. Now that clearly has the word respect in it. But now look at Genesis 17:24 and 25, and then we'll connect it to Genesis 21, verse number 3. Abraham was 90 years old and 9. He's 99 when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael, his son, was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. So right now in Genesis 17, there's only Abraham and Ishmael, and he's 13 years old. You go to chapter 21, Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, who Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And my point is, we know that there is at least a 13-year age difference. And this is what I'm asking. When you find that Galatians 4 says that Ishmael persecuted Isaac, do we think that all of this promised seed conversation was never taking place in front of the firstborn son? Is all of this discussion being behind closed doors? And also you might say, well, even if it's not happening behind closed doors, you are explaining to Ishmael that this is God's will. I don't know that at age 13 you can be appreciating this is accomplishing God's will over sibling rivalry. He is the firstborn. And there's a 13-year age difference. There's a lot of conversation being had, and he's going to be sent out with his mother Hagar. Here's Genesis 37, 3 through 4. Why do we fight? We fight over respect. We fight over affection. We fight over places of prominence. You got 12 sons, and all of the 11 are able to notice this. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children because he was a son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all of his brethren, they hated Joseph and could not speak peaceably unto him. All this is motivated over affections, feelings, a place of value. Genesis 27, 1 through 4, this is Jacob and Esau. And it came to pass that when Isaac was old and his eyes were dim, that he could not see, he called Esau his oldest son and said to him, he says, prepare this meal for me. And then he says, that my soul may bless you before I die. And you look at his instance of receiving the blessing as the firstborn. He had already sold his birthright to his brother. I don't know that Genesis 27 is about stuff, like the blessing, that it's about stuff so much as it is, I'm the firstborn, the mantle's being passed over to me, this is the line, and this is how it works. It's a place of prominence. And now these brothers are fighting. Here's a quote, and I said this to Dad the other day, and then Dad gave a quote back, and it will be later in this discussion this morning. One man said this about himself and his brother. He's the older brother. He said, the problem of estrangement between brothers is really a problem of proper relationship with the father. He said, I didn't get along with my younger brother until I had a talk with our dad. And when you look at those pieces in the Old Testament text, that idea, maybe it's not always the case, but you do basically look at Genesis chapter 4. Did Cain and Abel, that we know of, that we read of, did Cain and Abel have a problem with each other until Cain had a problem with God? Is Esau actually mad at Jacob, or is Esau mad at their father? Because it says, he vows, when my parents die, I'm going to go kill my brother. But then look what the text says. Esau saw that the daughters of Canaan displeased his father Isaac. Then went Esau unto Ishmael and took wives, which were of these people, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister, to be his wife. Are we not seeing him actually make these decisions to displease his living parents? Why? My father was tricked by my brother, and now I'm without the firstborn's birthright blessing. Do the same thing over here with the 11 sons. Are y'all mad at Joseph, or are you mad at your dad? Because you're about to do something that is not going to change your circumstances. Joseph being removed from the scene does not then just create new affection for some other son. So they're about to do something that doesn't just hurt Joseph, it's going to hurt their father. They took Joseph's coat, they killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the coat in the blood, and they sent the coat of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, we have found this. Know now whether it be thy son's coat or no. And he knew it, and he said, it is my son's coat. An evil beast has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent into pieces. And Jacob rent his clothes and put sackcloth upon his loins and mourned for his son many days. And all his sons and all of his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, for I will go down to the grave unto my son mourning. I cannot imagine that nobody, like if these are adult grown men, that nobody in that number of 11, because one of them said, we can't just kill him. So, I mean, we're having a discussion of what we can and cannot do, and there was nobody in there that said, like, is anybody imagining what we're going to do to our dad? And we obviously care what our dad thinks because we're angry that he has a favorite. I cannot imagine they didn't know what this was going to do. And so it raises the question of, is the problem between brothers, is the problem between siblings, or is it a problem with the father? And this is where somebody asked this question. Well, I hear you, but what does this mean for us today? And then this is my question back. What do you mean by us? And this is how the world means it. Someone's going to say, well, what does that mean for us as Baptists? What does that mean for us as Wesleyans? What does that mean for us as Romanists? As I said, in the afternoon, I'm going to go hear Miss Vogler talk about Revolutionary American time frame, and she's a member of the United Methodist sect. Everything that she thinks hinges on what does it mean for the United Methodists. When I went to the doctor the other day, I'll talk more about this in just a moment, my doctor was a Jehovah's Witness. Everything that he thinks hinges and depends on what Jehovah's Witnesses do. What does it mean for us today? And here's my point. People are divided from those who should be their brethren. You know, when I went over to, this was years ago, I went over to Rich Acres Christian, and I talked to Tim Hunt, and he said, "Why are you here talking to me?" And at the time, I was writing a paper for school. I said, "I'm writing a paper for school." And he said, "You should be out talking to people who don't even believe in Jesus. You shouldn't be talking to me." And I said, "Tim, do you go door knocking?" And he said, "No." And I said, "I have a better chance of coming in contact with the non-believers and disbelievers than you do." I said, "Because you don't leave your building. We broadcast on television and you don't." This is my thing. He believes in Jesus. I believe in Jesus. He would promote the Bible. I would promote the Bible. And we have this commonality, but these things then divide us. And here's this problem. Is it that these folk have a problem with me? Is it they have a problem with you? Or is it not that they actually have a pre-existing problem with the Father and it just bleeds into me and you? This is Matthew 23:9. When I went to like a Thursday Mass at St. Joe Catholic here in Martinsville, everything gets done and I asked the secretary, I said, I'm in my 20s back then, and I said, "Is Mr. White in?" And she said, "Father White?" "No, not Father White, and I'm never going to call him Father White. Matthew 23:9 is in the Bible." But now she's mad at me. Mister? What's wrong with Mister? And now she's mad at me, and she starts telling me that her husband is a lawyer. Good work that the lawyer did. They served my dad with a "don't come back" and not me. "Call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father which is in heaven." And they want you to call the priest father, and Pope means Papa, and they say the Pope is the actual sitting in the place of Jesus of Nazareth on the earth. No, I will not call them Father. And then they get mad at me, and I say, "No, you have a pre-existing problem with the Father, and it has nothing to do with me." And someone says, "Well, the Romanist sect is going to be one of the biggest religious institutions in the world." Do you know this same problem would basically bleed into Mormons, and no one bats an eye at these folk doing this? Do you know, when you talk about God, the creator of the universe, the Mormons think that you and I, because we live in this planet together, we share God. But when you start asking them, did God used to be a man on another planet in another timeline, and he got to become a God and make this universe? And they're going to say, "Yeah." These people want you to call a man Father. And the Mormons are doing the exact same thing. And somehow Mormons are crazy, but Roman Catholics are just Roman Catholics. Here's the Wesleyans. We will always have a problem until they give it up. Me and Gail Vogler, and me and other people that I know over at Uptown United Methodist, we're always going to have this problem until they stop sprinkling babies. Colossians 2:12-13. Buried with him in baptism, pouring water on someone isn't a burial, sprinkling water on them isn't a burial, and also rubbing a water cross on their forehead is not a burial. Wherein also you are risen with him through the faith of the operation of God. A baby does not have faith. A baby cannot comprehend any of this. The operation of God, who hath raised him from the dead, and you being dead in your sins and your uncircumcision of your flesh, and hath quickened together with him, having forgiven all your trespasses. And a baby doesn't have any sins. They can't commit any sins. They're just innocent and pure. And I say that, and now all of the United Methodists have a problem with me. All the Wesleyans have a problem with me. And I have to just say, I don't think that you have a problem with me as much as you have a pre-existing problem with the Father. And it's the same thing with all of our Baptist neighbors. You don't have a problem with me. You have a problem with Mark 16:16. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, but he that believeth not shall be damned. None of us wrote the Bible. And it's like, if somebody told us, if they would say something like this, "Why don't you get out of the book of Acts, and why don't you read one of the accounts of the life of Christ?" They don't just want you to read the life of Christ. They want you to read the life of Christ and skip every time water baptism is discussed. And you start asking them, "Well, you don't believe Mark 16:16. What do you believe?" Because it says belief and baptism. And they say, "Well, I believe belief only." Well, where'd you get that? Martin Luther. Well, I don't just believe like belief only. Someone says, a Baptist says, well, I believe he's got to say the sinner's prayer. Well, where'd you get that? Billy Graham. Another man named Billy Sunday. 1 Corinthians 4:6, I have in a figure transferred to myself and to Apollos for your sakes, that you might learn in us not to think of men above that which is written. Charles Stanley, Billy Graham, on and on and on. They have these problems going on, and you and I basically just get hit with it. Why are people divided from folks who should be their brethren? Because Romanists don't have Jesus as their head. Wesleyans will not acknowledge qualified candidates for salvation, which would be men and women only. And Baptists will not use just one standard, which would be the Bible only. They're going to use Baptist Faith and Message 2000 and any of their champions that they want to have. And here's what I want us to think about this morning when I say that quote. Is it a problem with your brother or your neighbor, or is it a problem with the Father? When you look at those texts and the things that separated them, affections, respect, and prominence, this religious scene in America has nothing to do with the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, the Bible, Jesus and his church. It has everything to do with these people when they say, my church. And they're thinking in terms of mine versus yours. My church, my tradition, your church, your tradition. Sometimes, the circumstances are wild. I told Joey that when I was sick in the last 2 weeks, I said, that's the most sick I have been outside of my ulcerative colitis. That's the most sick I have been in 10 years. And I can basically mark 10 years ago at Christmas time. I'm so sick. Everett got me sick. And Dad takes me, he rides over with me to urgent care. And as the doctor's like putting this stuff on me, he's checking my heart. And he says, well, what do you do? And so I start explaining to him what I do and what we do together and the work we do. And he said, well, what is that? I said, well, I'm a member of the Church of Christ. And he said, is that like Baptist? And I said, no. I said, the idea is to not be anything. I said, I'm not anything. I'm just a Christian. I said, we don't have like a board of trustees that tells us what to do. I'm not in a convention. I said, we don't have any creed books, nothing like that. I said, the idea is like not American denominationalism, not sectarianism. He goes, okay. And then he sits with me. He says, well, you don't have strep. I guess he said, you could have eaten something bad. You just got a bug. And I said, all right. He said, I can give you nausea medicine. I said, okay, I'll take it. And then he leans up against the wall and he says, I'm probably about as much opposite of what you described as you could possibly be. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, I'm big time in organized religion. And so I'm thinking he's going to be a Roman Catholic. Because he said, I'm probably in the biggest organized religion in the world. And I said, all right. And he said, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. And I said, the thing about the circumstances, I'm sick as a dog, doesn't stop this dude from talking to me. I said, okay. And I said, handful of differences. And he goes, he said, yeah, not so much. And I said, yeah. I said, I can't use y'all's Bible. I said, who translated the New World Translation? And I said, I don't know either, because no one ever tell me. And I said, y'all started with Charles Taz Russell? I said, can't do it. And he's still leaning back, and he goes, I said, handful of differences. And he goes, you believe in the Trinity? And I said, I don't believe that Jesus was a created being. I said, Jesus is God. And he goes, yeah, that's a big one. And then he said something else. He said, you do this? And I answered back to it. And I'm sick. And he said, well, we're all born in sin. And I said, nah, I don't go for that one either. And he said, well, I said, I'm not like all these other Jehovah's Witnesses. He said, and I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, I'm not going to say like, if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you don't have a shot at all. I mean, you could make it. And I'm sitting there thinking, a shot? As opposed to what? Y'all don't believe that hell is real. But here's my thing. The way that he introduces the conversation, and I will say this to him, he at least tried. I delivered some books, Muscles and Shovels, to some people that I know went and graduated from seminary. And when I started talking religion to them, they got uncomfortable. And it's like, what's the point in going to seminary if you can't freely talk about it? And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, here I am. And his discussion reduces me down to his Jehovah's Witness track list. The Trinity, and on and on and on he goes. And he admits, he said, I'm Jehovah's Witness, and he goes, been one my whole life. Do you know that when their textbooks that they read, that Jehovah's Witnesses teach themselves, they say, like if I come down the street and I hand them literature, Jehovah's Witness literature themselves says, it'd be better for you to accept a pornographic magazine than to read what these people are saying. There's no, like someone says, you ever thought outside of a Jehovah's Witness box? Impossible. I've never read non-watchtower material. It absolutely, when we look at the religious scene, the sectarian scene around us, they have a problem with the Father. There's not a problem with me and you. They get mad at me and you. They have all this stuff that they can't possibly defend. They've never looked at it. They don't give it a second thought. But they are so wound up in, this is my church. These are my people. I grew up with them. I know all of them. This is our tradition. This is shared. And they're bonded to an idea that has nothing. Well, let's say it this way. Estrangement between brothers is oftentimes manifested simply because there was a problem with the father. And someone says, well, what does it mean for Christians? Because Christians will divide from each other. Real Christians will divide from each other. Here's Luke 15, 25 through 32. We all know that the prodigal son, he takes his inheritance, he goes out, he wastes it on riotous living, and then he comes home. And he comes home with a plan. He says, I'll come home and say I'm not worthy to be a son anymore, I'll be a servant. And the father goes out, he runs out to meet the son, and it says with compassion, he falls on the son's neck, and he kisses him, puts a robe on him, puts a ring on him, they kill the fatted calf. Now his elder son was in the field, and as he came to draw nigh to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and said, what do these things mean? And he said unto him, your brother is come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has received him safe and sound. And he was angry and would not go in. Therefore came his father out and entreated him. And he answering said to his father, lo, these many years do I serve thee, neither transgressed I at any time thy commandment, and yet you never gave me a kid, that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this your son was come, which has devoured his living with harlots, you have killed for him the fatted calf. And he said to him, son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. It was meet that we should make merry and glad, for this thy brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. So you look at all those things in those instances in the Old Testament where we say, did the brothers really have a problem with each other, or did the brothers have a problem with the father? And you look at Luke 15, and you ask that same question again. Do these two brothers have a problem with each other, or does one of them have a problem with their shared father? What does such a question mean for Christians? Dad was telling me about a visit that he had not too long ago with a member of the church, and the way that he said it was a very good visit. It's going very, very well. Until this moment. The other man felt that he had to begin to explain to Dad his self-worth and his value. And what is that? That is children looking to be validated by other children. What does that mean? And I ask this question, do you think about like impressing me or impressing Dad? And then do you wonder or think to yourselves about that and then wonder, how is it that I'm not worried about impressing anybody and Dad is not worried about impressing anybody? And we hope that the goal is for everybody in here to feel that way? You have a father, so why would you be looking at what the brethren think? I'm over here, he's over there, you've never done this for me. The man began to explain his value and his self-worth, and it just becomes a moment of, at some point start doing that, we get very close to comparing ourselves, which Paul is going to say is not wise. Do you know the thing that he said in Luke 15, the older son says this? He says, "For many years do I serve thee, and I haven't transgressed in any time your commandments." This is the exact same conversation that Jesus talked about in Matthew chapter 7. "Not everyone that says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, and we had thy name cast out devils, and thy name done many wonderful works? And I will profess to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity." Luke 18, same conversation. Jesus says to them, there were two men that went into the temple, and the Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, "God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even this publican. I fast twice in the week, I give tithes of all that I possess." All of these instances have nothing to do with the other person. They have everything to do with that individual has an improper understanding of what the Father even looks at. The son says to the father, "I've been here serving with you for these years, all these years, and I've never transgressed at any time." And what does the father say back to him? "And you're the beneficiary of it. It's been good for you." And this is what Joey was saying in 9 o'clock. You know, I'll get his terms mixed up, but it's not wrong to have self-worth. It's not wrong to bring value to the table. But if you're looking for everybody to recognize it, you're going to drive yourself crazy. And I think this is for my doctor and my school teacher. I think that most religious people today, they want to be right about a collection of ideas and never think about Jesus or their neighbor. And the thing about everybody who wants to just, they're thinking, we're right. They're clearly incorrect. The entire Pentecostal sect hinges on speaking in tongues, and everybody except for Pentecostals knows they're not speaking in tongues. The entire Roman Catholic sect hinges on calling the Pope, and everybody except for Roman Catholics understands we're not doing that. But they wear it because it's their tradition. And it's these exact same points. I go into a doctor's office, and he starts hitting me with Jehovah Witness checklist. Same thing. Lutherans, I heard someone talking about Lutherans the other day. They're going to be hitting you with a Lutheran checklist. Episcopalians down the road, Episcopalian checklist. Are you ordained? Have you gone through catechism and been confirmed and all these different things? They're not thinking about Jesus and the neighbor, and they're certainly not thinking about being benefited by being connected to the Father. Luke 15:31, "Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine." 1 Corinthians 3:21 and 23, that's what Paul says. "Therefore let no man glory in men, for all things are yours, whether Paul or Apollos or Cephas or the world or life or death or things present or things to come, all are yours, and you are Christ, and Christ is God." I am really trying to get people into their book, into their closet to pray, and then think about their neighbors. And think about these people who don't have access to regular Bible teaching because they know if they go somewhere, it is gonna be a mess. All that I have is thine. All these things are yours. We are benefited by being connected to the Father. And what we're saying back to these people, what connects you to the Father is what the older son did not understand. It is by birth. Luke 15:18 and 19, "The younger brother, I will rise and go to my father, and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of your hired servants." He recognized the connection. I am what I am by birth. And he said, and in order to somehow come back into the good graces, he said, I'll give up what I had, and I'll take on a lesser estate if it gets me close to what I used to be. And that's the exact conversation that Paul says in Galatians 4:1-5. An heir, as long as he is a child, differs nothing from a servant. And in Luke 15, you have a son coming home saying, I will reduce myself as a servant. To redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. The benefit of being a Christian is coming into a state of God's favor as a born child. And the whole text of these statements of being a born child into the Father's house is that you're not in this system, as the older brother said, I've been serving all these years, and what has it gotten me? And he doesn't recognize what it got him. which is Romans chapter 3. They said, what's the advantage of being a Jew? And then Paul says, every way chiefly, you had the oracles of God. The value that we have of being connected to God outside of even the idea of going to heaven. Dad heard this morning from somebody he has not heard from in 10 years. And he said, Brother Johnny, can you give me $20 so that I can get home? He's basically doing a taxi. And so, I don't know what you thought, but my thought was, you're getting a taxi at 6 in the morning and you ain't got no money. That means you've been out all Saturday night and now you can't get home. And that's, so they're having a good Saturday night, good time Saturday night. You ain't got no money. $20 on Sunday morning, you're not having a good time. And I know him. He's divorced. He's my age, and he's already divorced. He's not having a good time at all. And so when we start talking about the connection to the Father, y'all, they're just with things that life hits us with. I'm saying, y'all, I'm just saying for myself. I have a good wife. I have a healthy baby. I am currently enjoying good health that I hope stays for a good long time so that I can raise my baby. I'm enjoying good health. I have a roof over my head. I have food on the table. And I have shoes on my feet. And I got wheels under my feet. And I got $20 in my pocket that my buddy doesn't have. I've got it made. You've got it made. And when you start looking at it in someone, what is going to be a separating factor? Some of the things that I see people that are my age that they do, I don't invite that type of chaos into my home that is against God's word. And that's just it. It's not like rocket science. When Ian and Joey stayed overnight at the warming center, the homeless shelter, people were leaving out in the morning and the workers were saying to these people, make good decisions. That's what it amounts to. And we benefit that way. We have this value by being connected. And Galatians 3:26 says this, you, that's plural, you all are the children of God by faith in Christ Jesus. For as many of you as been baptized into Christ have put on Christ, there's neither Jew nor Greek, there's neither bond nor free, there's neither male nor female, for you all are one in Christ Jesus. And if you be Christ, then you're Abraham's seed, and you are heirs according to the promise. We have this great value of being connected to the Father by birth, which again is Galatians 4:1-5. Now, this is what we have to figure out, and Joey touched on it again in his 9 o'clock out of the book of Judges. Luke 15, the youngest son said, I'm no longer worthy to be called a son. I'll go home, I'll be a servant. And then the older brother who stayed said, I've been here this whole time and I'm serving. One is serving in order to get something. One is ready to serve because he realizes what he already had. And you look at a situation like that in Luke chapter 15, and I think the question just comes down to this. Are you serving? Then someone says, well, I have to figure out why I want to serve to begin with. I think what we need to do is be busy serving rather than some of these people who just sit at a drawing board all the time saying, well, if I serve for the wrong reasons, then I might as well not serve at all. And if I can't serve to the degree this other person serves, then I'll just let them pick up everything. No, are you doing something for somebody who is not yourself? People, and I said this a moment ago, I'm doing well. God is blessing me. Are we looking for ways to help these other people that could be blessed by God and they're fighting him and they think they're fighting us? 2 Timothy 2:25, they're opposing themselves. One is serving in order to get something. One is serving because he realizes what he already had. Do you realize how good you have it in Christ? All spiritual blessings in Christ. And then on top of that, he does give us information to make life better. Do people realize what they're missing outside of Christ? No. And I think that's why we have to have conversations with them. And we do have to point out what you guys are calling normal behavior is not normal behavior. That's just dysfunction. They have to be shown a better way, and we have to do it with them. How's your connection to the Father? 2 Corinthians 5:17 through 21, all this has to do with connection. He says, I am a born son, but I'm coming home as a servant, and the born son who's at home doesn't recognize the blessing that he has. Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. And all things are of God, who hath reconciled us to himself. That's connection. To wit, God was in Christ reconciling the world unto himself. That's connection. And then he says, we beseech and pray Christ in your stead, be ye reconciled to God. That's connection. 21, verse number 21, he hath made him to be sin for us who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. That's connection. And here's what people say. People fight for whatever reasons, and someone says, well, I'm with God, but I'm not with them, and it just doesn't work that way. Because 2 chapters after 2 Corinthians 5, he says this, having therefore these promises, dearly beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all filthiness of the flesh and spirit, perfecting holiness in the fear of God. Receive us. We have wronged no man. We have corrupted no man. We have defrauded no man. I know you, and I think you're a good person. So why is it that we have these people who are saying, well, I don't like them, X, Y, Z? Romans 15:7, wherefore receive ye one another as Christ also received us to the glory of God. I hope that you have people in your life, and I know that you do, just as I'm about to revisit with Gail Vogler for the however manyth time to talk about religious division. I would say keep trying with the people that we're divided from, because I sure would like to be brothers and sisters with Gail Vogler and a handful of other people that I know that go over to Uptown Methodist. They repent, believe the Bible instead of a creed book, and we get to do work together. I know you have those people in your life, and they're not upset with you. They're having a problem with the Father. So if you can think of them in that way, hopefully you'll be motivated to try it with them more than one more time. Let's think about it as we stand and sing.
Lift up your voice, leave with him your care.